G'day all, thanks for having me here today. You're hearing about Flow Power for the second time. Jack gave a lovely intro to us earlier in the morning, it was actually the afternoon rather, about who we are. So I'll try not to double up a bit on that. You'll be hearing from Travis again tomorrow for the third time, so Trav can reintroduce us for the third time tomorrow. I'm here to talk about gaining a competitive advantage during the energy transition, that's specifically in Australia. So we're talking about the Australian market, the dynamics here, and specifically what manufacturers can do to gain an advantage in their operations. Three key things that Flow Power does. We have electricity plans, we're a retailer, but we focus on rewarding efficient energy use. And what does that mean? You'll hear about it later on, but time of use is so critical when it comes to electricity. Historically, it hasn't been as important, but these days it is becoming significantly more important as we transition from a coal-based grid to more of a renewable intermittent grid, and prices are changing as a result of that. We have our own renewable energy generation portfolio. It is modest in size. We develop up to around 5 megawatts of project size ourselves. We're currently doing our largest project to date, which is a 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt hour battery project here in Victoria, which is a big step for us, but we are focusing only on renewable energy generation. And lastly, of course, those two things combining mean that we support businesses with achieving their ambitious sustainability targets. And we do that primarily through our electricity contracting structure, which includes power purchase agreements, which we'll hear about more in a moment. So what's happening in the market at the moment? I'll be very brief here because we've heard a lot about it today. But historically, the NEM, when it was established in '98 and through the early 2000s, was a coal-based supply market. Electricity prices were set up in a peak and off-peak structure. Jack spoke earlier in the day about the cost of energy being highest during the daytime, or being relatively high during the daytime when it was a coal supply market. Now, in sort of 2015 through 2020, significant shift towards solar renewable energy generation sources has meant that we are seeing very, very big shifts in what the daytime price of electricity is. And there's a lot of opportunity for manufacturers and industry generally to take advantage of those. Trying to capture all the forces at work in Australia's electricity market is tough, but there's a few key things that we see as being big drivers. Government policy is huge. There's so much to talk about, but the large renewable energy target and the small renewable energy target as well has been a big driver in getting businesses to invest in renewables. The weather here is always going to be a huge problem for us. We're a very hot country, but what's actually been quite interesting to see is a shift in the way that electricity prices trend in the market over time. Historically, electricity prices were most expensive during summertime. We had a lot of air conditioning load, industrial load as well, driving prices up. But now, as we're sort of shifting to more solar and more wind as well, we're seeing a lot of supply in that summertime period as well, which can meet that demand. So the dynamic is changing, and we're actually starting to see winter peaking markets become quite common, which is interesting and also something that businesses have to manage as a bit of a challenge. And demand is changing as well. We're seeing electrification, as we've heard about. We're seeing EV uptake increase. We're seeing customers move their demand around generally to try and take advantage of these prices. And these are all really what's driving the dynamic we're seeing in the market today. This is a really good chart. I love showing this one here. It just highlights what we've all spoken about today, but the shift away from our traditional generation sources of coal, both black and brown, to where we are today, where you see a significant amount of wind, of utility solar, and of also rooftop solar that's supplying our grid. We've gone from 8% in 2000 to near 40% last year. Wind and solar is growing rapidly, but I do want to highlight down here the storage element. We've heard a bit about the role that batteries can play in the market. Jack spoke about that earlier today. And we see at Flow Power that batteries are a huge, huge opportunity for both grid scale application as well as behind the meter application at C&I sites. Jack, I and Trav, we focus on the C&I sites. We are doing a large project ourselves here in Vic, but we see that on the customer demand side, there is huge application for behind the meter storage, and Jack coined it flexing the inflexible, right? A battery does allow you to move your load around without actually impacting your operations at all. And what does that mean for price? Well, I guess, everyone wants to see a cheaper electricity bill. And I guess the biggest impacts that we're seeing in the market at the moment is the shift away from, expensive daytime prices to cheaper daytime prices. Daytime prices are now really cheap thanks to the plentiful renewables we're seeing in the market. And morning and evening periods, when everyone's getting up and drying their hair in the morning or coming home from work and putting on the air conditioner and cooking dinner, they're the most expensive times to buy power. And the comment was made by Scott earlier, I think, about, everyone should get solar on their roof. Well, I mean, I do actually beg to differ. You can just buy from the wholesale market and take advantage of what is actually going out on there already. There is a huge role for solar to play for us still, but I think the application of solar and storage together is really what we need to see. Otherwise, we're going to see this continued curtailment of solar, which is happening a lot in the market. Grid scale is getting turned off, particularly in South Australia and other states as well, because there is just not enough demand to meet that supply. Specifically manufacturing, I wanted to highlight a couple of opportunities that we have and we see in our customer book. The first one I wanted to, once again, rehash here is that time of use, so when you're using your power, is so much more critical now than maybe it has been in the past. The traditional model of fixed peak and off-peak rates meant that if you wanted to take advantage of a different price, you had to go from midday to midnight, 12 hours of shift change perhaps, which is a very, very big thing to ask of a business. But nowadays, small shifts from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., for example, or from 7 p.m. back to 4 p.m. can make a really, really big impact in the price you pay for electricity if you're buying it from the wholesale market. And I will say that not every customer is exposed to the wholesale market. That does come with risk. Obviously, there is variability in price, but all of Flow Power's products have some sort of link or look through to the wholesale market. So for us, it's a lot about educating customers about sort of what opportunity there is in the market to step out of a traditional contracting structure and look at wholesale pricing. There are a couple of customer examples I wanted to share here. These are two of our existing customers, both in the manufacturing industry, and we kind of see two key customers get the best value out of our model. The first is someone who's a natural fit. They might already have operations that are daytime heavy. In this example, Anchor, they're a machining manufacturer here in Vic. You can see that their midday load is approximately 75% higher than their base load. So they've got a lot of activity happening in the daytime, which means that for them, when they've got their highest load during the day, the average price in Victoria for the last 30 days was negative $22 a megawatt hour. So for them, they're able to manufacture or undertake their business getting paid to use electricity, not considering the network costs, etc. But their wholesale cost for electricity was negative during that period, which is an incredible example of sort of someone who doesn't have to do anything differently in their business, but can benefit from the transition that we're seeing already. The other example is one that you heard about earlier today from Jack, and it's Michelle Wool. They're a customer of ours in South Australia. These guys aren't necessarily a natural fit, but they have a very, very responsive approach to electricity. So thanks to the work that Jack and the team have done in the engineering department about automating demand response, these guys are able to power down their operations instantly when prices are high. Now, that's not something that happens very quickly and easily. There's a lot of work that's gone into making that happen. But here's an example, actually a different one, thankfully, that I pulled up than what Jack showed. That 18th of July this year, there was a price spike in the morning in South Australia, which isn't actually that typical. Usually you see that in the evening. They were able to turn off their load, respond to this price event, and save 45% of their energy costs for that day, which is a significant achievement. Demand response generally, which is what we're talking about here, can be a really rewarding activity for businesses, and there actually are more structured demand response programs that we advocate our customers to consider when they come to Flow Power. The first one is run by the market operator. It's called RERT, Reliability and Emergency Reserve Trader, and we actually saw some RERT events this last week in New South Wales when there was significantly hot days up there. There were some outages in the market, meaning that the supply was low, and the RERT mechanism is essentially a backup, a reserve, which means that AEMO can call on customers to turn off their load to be paid, essentially. It helps maintain power system stability, and for businesses who are already doing demand response, it's a second revenue stream. And we really encourage all of our customers that have capacity to do so to participate in this scheme. The other one, which is a good example of an alternative scheme, is actually a network run scheme down here in Victoria. AusNet, one of the larger networks we've got here, run a program themselves called Critical Peak Demand, which every summer they nominate 5 days when the network is going to be most under stress. And they say to customers, if you can reduce your load during that window, it's usually I think it's going to be from 4 till 7 in the afternoon, if I'm correct. If you can reduce your load during that window, your entire year's network charges will be cheaper. So it's a huge incentive for businesses to reduce their load during a very small time window, so let's call it 3 hours, 5 times a summer, 15 hours a summer, to then get a really, really cheap component of their network bill for the rest of the year. So it's actually awesome, I think, to see an example of the market operator encouraging flexibility, but then also networks providing flexibility. And then obviously on Flow Power's model, our retail model encourages flexibility. So these are things that our customers are engaged in quite regularly. One thing we haven't yet talked about, which I'll cover now, is what power purchase agreements are and the role they can play in the market. We've heard about how much wind and solar is being put into the market, and these projects actually do rely often on customers committing to buy a portion of that output for them to get off the ground. They're looking for finance usually. If they're getting funding, the banks want to know that they're going to have stable returns. If they're going to be selling their electricity into a variable market, then it's going to be challenging to get banks to fund sometimes. So power purchase agreements or PPAs are a really critical tool for enabling the transition because it allows both customers to buy renewable energy and also projects to get stability on their returns. There's a couple of examples you can do behind the meter PPAs, which I'm sure we'll hear about from Hugh soon, which is when a customer agrees to buy the energy as it's generated behind their meter. But what Flow Power does focus on more so is in front of the meter PPAs, which means it's very large scale projects, several hundred megawatts perhaps, that we buy from a generator and we carve up into smaller portions and make available to our customers. The advantages of it are you get a 10-year energy price, you aren't exposed to fluctuations in the market, which can sometimes be a bit of a shock when customers come off a 2 or a 3 year contract and the market has rallied by 200%, which has happened before. The advantage for the customer side is price, but then obviously the advantage for your ESG side is that you're helping new projects enter the market. So you're obviously decarbonising your supply and I guess leading from the front by saying, I want to be able to support this new project and bring it into the market. And lastly, I wanted to provide an example of one of these in our customer base. This is Snack Brands. They manufacture some of the most well-known chip brands out there, and they've come to Flow Power looking for an opportunity to contract a long-term PPA to both decarbonise and also improve their cost outcomes. We were able to match their electricity load against 2 projects, the Bowman Solar Farm and the Sapphire Wind Farm in New South Wales. And in order to do that, we were able to give them a much better forecast of what their price outcomes would be up to 10 years into the future, which I guess for them is an awesome way to budget and also means that they can decarbonise their electricity supply. Getting the wind up here from Jeff, so luckily that's my last slide, Jeff. So thank you very much, everybody.